and this is Abhishek. I'm a solution architect in CloudFront, and I provide lots of training on the AWS, Azure, and other cloud areas. And today's session, we will be focusing on Azure DevOps, and few people might be aware of little bit about the DevOps, few people might not be. So my planning is to start the uh, DevOps, what the DevOps is, and how this is in current market, and then how Azure has services and offering to the DevOps world. So we'll go from there, and we will try to cover each area, but not in details because we have the time constraint. But we will try to cover as much as possible in today's session and tomorrow's session. So hope everybody can see my screen and can hear me properly. Okay. Okay, perfect. So let's start with the content. So my way of doing it, I will just try to explain a concept and then I will go on to the Azure portal where we can see a live demo, what I'm trying to do and what I can showcase to you in today's and tomorrow's session. And I will split the session between today's. I can cover some of the portion today and some of the portion tomorrow. So let's go straight to the PPT. Okay, and let's go to the first of all, we'll try to understand what is the DevOps, and then we will jump onto that, what exactly the Azure DevOps offering for us. So as the terms DevOps, and it's kind of an abbreviation of development plus operation. So most of us, I believe, from the IT background, so we know we will have a development phase of the cycle where we develop the code and do all of work related to development, and once it goes to operations where we try to promote our code and recurrent like enhancement and again migrate our code into next environment. So this DevOps was happening before also. It's not like this is something new, but in the current scenario, it is getting a popularity, and altogether it's becoming a new field itself or new area itself. So before also we used to have our code development phase, and we were having waterfall model and so on. But as soon as we are people are jumping onto agile methodology and sprint and so on, then this DevOps is becoming so critical so that it can be achieved within the timeline. So that's why lots of people started talking about the DevOps, and the DevOps is becoming a complete new field altogether, and lots of people have started getting expertise into this area. Okay, so um, DevOps is not a small area. So just to be on focus, that this training is more on the Azure side. But in the DevOps world, there are lots of other vendors out there and other players are there. Whether it's a Jenkins, then we have the Terraform, then AWS also have started their own DevOps area and services as well. And Azure was already having it before. He just renamed it, and now it's becoming as Azure DevOps, and they're trying to include as much as services possible inside that. Okay, and as I always do that, I always keep the content which is offered by either Azure or AWS or Snowflake, whoever is the authentic documentation I can find. So that's what I have mentioned all this link, and this PPT will be shared with everyone after this training. So directly we can go to the Azure DevOps website. So if you guys wanted to like try in your side also in your laptop, so you can type dev.azure.com and it will open a page like this here. The reason I'm not opening directly into my Google Chrome, the reason I have already created and I have already a demo project created for you guys. So if I open that, it will not show you what exactly I'm trying to show you guys. Okay, so it will, so something like that, you will miss the initial version of how Azure DevOps looks like. Okay, so that's the reason I have opened into a different browser. So as soon as you type dev.azure.com. Okay, this page will open, and this will is like very first page which shows what Azure DevOps is. And this was not all together, it was here. Slowly it has grown, and you can see five different services which Azure is offering under a DevOps umbrella. Okay, and we will try to cover all this in a short period of time, and like we will try to cover as much as we can do. Okay, so as we have mentioned before, this PPT is there. I might not go one by one how I prepared the PPT, but this PPT will cover what I am going to explain today and tomorrow. Okay, and this is all what I can share with you guys. So it will give you, if you wanted to do at your home, once the session will be over. But I will be covering all this content, directly talking and directly showing the demo. So let's go back here, and you can see there are five different field which Azure, or there are five different services which Azure DevOps offers under their umbrella. So we have Azure Board, okay, then we have Azure Pipeline, then we have repos and Azure Test Plan and Azure Artifact. So I will just give a brief idea about all these fives, and then we'll pick one of them, and then we'll try to go a little depth inside that. Okay. So this is a very first page, dev.azure.com, and this is already mentioned here. If you see the page, I have already mentioned here, and how to create a project and how to go into that. So you can do it later also if you want, or you can do it parallelly with me as well. So let's come back here. So we have five different areas: Azure Board. I'm repeating again: Azure Boards, Azure Pipeline, Azure DevOps, Test Plan, and Azure Artifact. So most of us might be knowing what is the Jira, what is the Agile methodology, what is the iteration, what is the sprint planning, and so on. Because I believe the waterfall has been almost died a long back, and every team and who are working in the IT field, they know what the Jira board is, or any kind of board which represents their iteration planning, sprint planning, or the Epic, and so on, either Jira or maybe some other tool. Okay, but very few of you, or very few people knows that Azure has a board offering which is equivalent to Jira board, or equivalent to Jira kind of work, which is called a Azure board. If I just try to open this guy, I think I might have opened it here. Anyways, I will show live demo about that. So this is equivalent to your Jira board. And what is the Jira, or what is this Azure board is. So as we have moved forward from the waterfall model and entered into a agile methodology, where we are trying to discretely define the work in a short span of time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks of a sprint, and then we are trying to divide, or trying to make a piece of bigger work into smaller chunk of work, which will be ultimately going as a part of your stories and the task and so on, right? So this might be a key word you guys might be listening in your day-to-day work, where you might have heard the features is defined, or epic has been defined, and then according to that there will be some stories has been created. And then if I just try to show you this guy, or maybe let's see. Okay. So yeah, I will come to that. I'm just trying to explain a little bit first. So it will be a kind of your common board, or backlog, or dashboard, or kind of a work what the team is doing, right? So let's say you have a team of 10 people, and everybody is assigned with some stories. Then you have a scrum master, then you have a project manager. So project manager is handling all the project related work. Then the epic is created and features are created. Those are divided into a piece of work which can be delivered, right? The main uh, main good thing of this board, or the Jira board or Azure board, is we are trying to define a work or define a story which can be delivered, right? It cannot be like something you are trying to take a huge work and there's no acceptance criteria which can be defined what is ultimately a client is getting delivered, right? So that is the main perspective of this board, where you're trying to define a task or stories, and that can be delivered or that can be demoed. Correct. So this board is Azure board, is one of the offering from Azure. Okay, and this is not very different from Jira if you're working on Jira. And few people who are already working on Azure board, they are completely familiar. This is also almost like 80-90% similar to any other Kanban board or Jira board or any other agile board. Okay, where you can have the everything defined and assigned to individual and tracked within the sprint. Okay, so let's go back and try to create a project and try to come back to the board, and then we can try to do the live demo about it, how we can go and see these things. Okay, but before going to that, I will just try to cover few more sub areas which we have discussed. So this is about the Azure board. If anyone has any question, they can ask quickly. Maybe one or two sort of small question if anybody has. If we do not have, then I will proceed. Okay. So this is about this one. Okay. And if I try to go back to here. Okay. So this was about the Azure board and the Azure pipeline and Azure repos. These are actual DevOps. If somebody asks you in the what is the Azure DevOps, very few people think about the Azure board. What Microsoft or Azure is trying to do, they're trying to bring everything in one plate where it is related to our delivery perspective, automated delivery perspective, right? So that's why this Azure board also is coming under Azure DevOps. But in normal scenario, normal world, when we talk about the Azure DevOps or any kind of DevOps, it's mostly you will see about the you are creating a pipeline or you're creating some kind of Git repo or some kind of repository where you have a codes, and that code will be migrated into your next environment, which is test or prod QA or prod. Okay, and so that's why these two offering comes. So Azure pipeline and Azure repos. Okay, so repository is repository, whether it's a Git repository, and the Azure also have some offering of keeping your code, right? So what is the repos? Repos is nothing but repository, whether it's a Python code or PySpark or Java or .NET, whatever the code is, right? You should have some kind of a script, some kind of code which you want to store at a repository, so that that can be your base code. And as soon as you're trying to promote them into next environment, then this repo will be used to promote it into next environment. So this repo is, and most of you might have heard about GitLab or GitHub and something similar to that. Okay, so this is nothing but similar to Git repo or any other repo which Azure also offer. And when you see, they are talking about Azure DevOps, where they have their own offering, as well as they have onboarded the Git and GitHub, GitLab and GitHub as well. So that is the most popular repos in the current world, where most of the codes we are storing either into GitHub or GitLab. Okay, so this is the offering which Azure's offer. So if we go and try to see repos here, so yeah, so it will be something like that, and we are going to see the demo about that as well. So what will happen? You will have Git repository, and there are lots of things comes into picture when we talk about repos. Then you will have your base code, then any enhanced code, then you'll try to merge them, then you try to migrate them, and so on. So once the code base is created, it's not like that is a final version, right? So you keep on adding the code, you keep on merging the code, syncing the code, so that your repository always have the latest code. That is one thing when we talk about the repos, right? What is the second thing? Second thing is you can always go back to your previous version. So uh, let's say you have some code. Okay, so let's say today is July, what is the date? July 30th, right? And then you have a V version of code, and then let's say August 5th, okay, and then you have a v2 version of code, and so on, right? So what is the this repo does? So repos does what is this repo do? So on July 30th you have tried to build a code or repos where you have a v version of code, v1 version of code. Later point of time and in a week, let's take a more um, let's talk about 2 weeks of a sprint, right? So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to explain you how these things are connected. It is little difficult to combine all this thing and understand, like if you are new to this area. But if you are already knowing this little bit, then you can easily combine all these things. So that's why Microsoft or Azure is mindfully trying to onboard all these 5 or 6 sub services into one platform so that people understand what they're talking about, right? So let's say, and then I'm trying to explain in the similar way. Okay, so let's say if I have a v1 version of code which is in my repo, okay, I can say a repo as I think I have already created a repo. Let me see. So let's say this is my project. Yeah, so something like that I have created. Okay, and inside that I have created some repos. Okay, so let's say this is one of the project. Okay, and inside that I have a repo which is having the v1 version of code. Okay, so what we are talking about, so this, let's say this is your sprint one. Okay, sprint one ends here. Okay, where July 30th was the sprint one ending. So by that time you have v1 version of code in your repos, right? Now another sprint started where the stories are assigned and tasks are assigned to developer, and the product owner and the scrum master is tracking through the next 2 weeks of time to each developer. Each individual bugs comes, and then some blockers comes and so on. But in the next 2 weeks the developer did a hard work and they have promoted and they have created some more code, or they have developed some more code, or they have enhanced the existing code. Okay, so end of second sprint. Okay, so what is happening? Sprint 2, correct? So we got into sprint 2, and this also ends on 14th of August, right? So what happens now? If we go here, so till July 30th I was having a code v1, and then now August 14th, okay, what is happening now? We got a v2 code, correct? So all this has to be gone, all this has to go into your repository, correct? And somebody can ask why you wanted to keep our code on repository, and that is very important question to understand. So before, when we are doing our code check-in, check-out, and so on, you guys might be hearing about this. Somebody is doing the code check-in, somebody is doing the checkout and pull request and merge request, and different people like does that, right? So let's say somebody say raise a pull request, somebody say raise the merge request, and so on, right? So what they're trying to do, so let's say you have a code, v1 code or v1 version of code on 30th. Now you are trying to add some extra enhancement in the existing code, right? And so that in your repository you have a latest code. So what you do, you raise a some pull request, and then you create some merge request, and then what will happen? Let's say you created a branch which is a 14th of August, okay, and the branch name is August spent to branch, something like that. I'm just giving the name so that we can remember. Okay, so this is another branch where we have the v2 code. Okay, where we have the v2 code. Now this v2 code is present into your branch, it is not present into master. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to get this guy come, and then it has to merge into master. So if you guys not aware of it, like how this Git repo works and everything, so let me give you a little idea. So, okay, so always the latest code or your the base code will be in the master branch. Okay, it will be always like that. Okay, and then we will see everything live as well. So I'm just trying to, your code will be in your master branch, the latest code or the base code. Okay, so base code. Yeah, so base code will be in your master branch, right? And this will be always the base code, and this cannot be touched, okay? Because this is your actual repository of the code. Okay, so this cannot be touched directly. Okay, and few people might not have access to edit that and do anything directly unless until you are product owner or a project manager. Okay, rest of the guys, what options they have given. Okay, so let's say you are doing the coding, then what will happen. Okay, so you create a new branch. Okay, you create a new branch. Okay, on top of what? On top of your master branch. Okay, so you come here and you create a new branch over master branch. Okay, and then you give the name. Okay, then you give a name which I have given. So let's say I have given this name. So you created a branch. Okay, which is like as soon as starting of the sprint. Now what will happen? I have a base branch or base code present in master branch. Then as soon as the sprint started, I have created a new branch, which I took it from master branch and created a new branch, which is called August sprint 2 branch, something like that. Okay. So what the use of this branch? So what somebody will do, they will keep on working in the next 2 weeks, which is like uh, uh, August, no, not August, July 31st to August 14th. So 2 weeks the people are working, developers are working, they are creating their codes and everything, and they keep on adding their codes into the branch. They cannot add it here because it was instructed, okay, whatever the new changes you have, you should keep it here. Okay, whatever the new code, script and database changes, or whatever the scheduling changes, everything, whatever you have a given option, you can go and have it here. Okay, now what will happen? Mm, there's no such restriction that you can merge the code in the end of a sprint. You can merge in between as well if your project decided to do that. But let's, for the simplicity, what we are trying to understand, as soon as the sprint 2 ends on the August 14th, all the codes or all the enhancement happen in last 2 weeks, that will be merged into the master. Okay, so let's say end of sprint 2. Okay, all the codes, okay, which was developed, okay, now it will be merged. Okay, merged into master. Okay, what do you mean by that? The meaning is, if I give you a very short example, okay, let's say I have a script 1, okay, dot py, okay, and it was having, let's say, 50 lines of code. Okay, till July 30th. Okay, till July 30th, I was having this much code. In the same script, because of some enhancement, okay, some new like other developer worked. Okay, now he has added, let's say, 20 more lines of code into that. So we were already having 50 lines of code plus 20 lines of code, correct? Now it is becoming 70 lines of code. I'm just giving a very layman example so that everybody understand. And end of August 14th, what we got? We got a new script or the enhanced script, which is having 70 lines of code. So what do you mean by that? How it, this 20 lines of code has to be merged into existing code. That's the meaning of merging your new development into existing work. So you guys might be hearing this lot, or few people might not be if that is not part of your work, but this is exactly happen. So this is like whole process. Okay. So first of all, the Azure board, which I have discussed, right? And this, I really feel like Microsoft is really mindful to have all this thing in one place. The Azure board is tracking your work, correct? Then next to sprint, what you are doing, what you are not doing, what are the blockers, how many stories you completed, what did you code, what you did not code, and so on, right? Now this is a Scrum Master work. Azure board is mostly Scrum Master work, but these are Azure pipeline and Azure DevOps and repos and so on is kind of a developer work come of the who is maintaining the code, right? So let's say if you have a specific DevOps team who will be maintaining the your code, then you are lucky enough. But if you do not have a specific DevOps team, then it's a developer responsibility to develop their code, sync the code into Git and promote it into next environment and so on, which I'll come in a second or like in a couple of minutes once we talk about Azure pipelines. But if you are a single team who is handling the development, maintaining the code, and making the Git all the time have to be in the latest version, then it's a developer work. Okay, so if we are done with the our sprint in 2 weeks, now it's a developer was already doing the development. In the last 2 days or 1 or 2 days was given them to merge their code into repos and everything, where they spend the time to make sure whatever the code they have developed that should be present in your master repository. Okay, so let's come back here. So first portion we know what we did. Second portion is Azure repos. Okay, so Azure repos we just discussed. We have one branch and the second branch, and then we have one version of code, and then we have second version of code. Correct. Now we just see till here we were having a July 30th, we were having a 50 lines of code. This is very layman example. Okay, there will be lots of complication happens in when we're trying to merge. I'm giving you a very simple example just to make you understand. Okay, and this is exactly happen with lots of different complication and lots of different stuff we have to do it. Okay, which if anybody interested we can discuss in detail in the DevOps other session, but not today. Okay, but for today example, let's say we have a script one with py where we have 50 lines of code and we got it till here. Okay, now in a 2 weeks of time some developer worked on this sprint one script one because this was a part of enhancement. Okay, so let's say how we can correlate everything. Sprint 2. Okay, the story, let's say we have some story number xyz. Okay, this guy work. Okay, so this is exactly it is tracked, and this is exactly you might be working if you have like little these things correlated in your project. So sprint 2, then you have given a story xyz where we have to work on the script y, which might be given as a part of your description of the story or description of the task. And then acceptance criteria might have given as an end of the sprint, you should develop this or you should enhance this. And then there will be some demo happen for a story, or you have to demo to your tech lead or manager or maybe business, depending on project to project. Okay, so end of August. Okay, end of August 14, this story goes to closer. Then this story, this sprint is anyways getting closed. Then the story ultimately has to be closed with the acceptance criteria is getting matched. Then this script has to be enhanced, whatever the requirement you have given to work upon. And then ultimately you have 70 lines of code, but still you have just developed in your local environment or your development environment. That doesn't mean that it is present into your organization repository. And what is the challenges, why this people are getting crazy to have everything into repos, and they don't want to like left the code into developers local access or local machines and their desktop. And that is a very important point anybody can ask, why everybody is getting crazy nowadays to have it everything in Git. And that is very important question to ask and important thing to understand. Let's say we have seen the lots of people coming into organization and living, and some few people are living on good term, few people are not living on good term, and because of their like lack of responsibility or lack of process in the project, let's say few people just abruptly left the team and they did not share what they have worked in last 2 3 months or 6 months. And let's say a few people have shared but they have not shared into a standard practice and so on. What happened, like your project is getting hit very badly because of the either resource was not responsible or your project team or project is not that like following the standard. What happens, you're not tracking all these codes and whatever the development happened in a proper way. And when it is handing over to the next guy who's coming to the team on getting onboarded to the team, he will feel like so much like annoyed and he doesn't have anything proper to start with. And then he goes to management manager or tech lead and he asks what is the base code he has, and then manager and tech lead says I don't know, it should be somewhere. And the people who was leaving, he should have given a kt and so on, right? So this is a complete mess. And what the example I'm giving, that is a real example. It is not a hypothetical example, it happens to almost everyone and every team. To overcome with all these issues and mess and everything, what the teams are coming with that, we don't want to delay any kind of merging the code and whatever the new enhancement happening or new work happening, it has to be in your Git, or it has to be in some kind of repos. And what example I have given, that is one kind of risk, right? The second kind of risk is, let's say you are working on some coding, and because of server went down or server got corrupted, and because server was trying to reboot itself, and it was able to reboot, let's say 3 weeks back or 1 month back only, then again, even though nobody has left the company, the 1 month work is into jeopardy because it was not checked out in the Git or any other repository. So there are lots of risk factor. Okay, these things are not coming into just like that. It has to come and become the part of your daily work. No, it has a real sense of becoming these things to come and becoming the everyday part of work, so that your effort is not lost, whatever you are doing, that is intact, and everything is documented, everything is stored, so that if you are here or somebody is like replacing you, or if you are entering into some new team, you should have all the code and all the versions present, so that you know what next you have to do, rather than struggling what was developed by the previous developer and previous team, and spend your time and effort into digging those things rather than moving forward. That is a very time and the money loss. So that is the main reason all the teams are going into this area, where they're asking every developer to check in their code as soon as the development is done in a 2 weeks or 1 week of time, so that your changes and your code is stored and safe into Git, right? So that is the main reason this whole process has to happen to secure your code. Do not unnecessarily waste your time and money to just to dig the old version of code and old things, and you should move forward. So that's why the whole world is moved to Agile, where your work is documented, planned nicely, and everything. So Azure board is tracking your work. Azure repos is tracking and storing your actual physical code, which might be Java, Python, PySpark, .NET, or any database related DDL, or any kind of other scripting, or you have any kind of scheduling, whatever it is. Okay, so all kind of code and all kind of your code base is placed into your repo. Okay, so that's the main reason of having this one. So anyone has any question about this one? We can take one or two questions in a very uh, short questions if anybody has. Okay, I'll take this as a no, and then we can move forward. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so that is the main reason of this repos. Okay, so Azure board we have discussed, and then we have discussed the Azure repos. Now discuss about this pipeline. Okay, and why this pipeline is needed. Okay, so what we have discussed so far. Okay, so let me see. We have, just make me a little more Azure board. Okay, board where we haven't created, we will create this story and task and epic and everything. Okay, we have task, and we can have epic and then stories and so on. Okay, and then we can have a sprint, then we can have iteration, and then so on, and demo happen and so on. Okay, so that is your part of Azure board, right? So this is, we have just discussed, we haven't implemented this, we'll try to implement this as well. Okay. And let's say this is first portion which we have discussed. Okay, so this is all under your Azure DevOps, right? So this is your Azure DevOps. Okay, inside that you have Azure board. Okay, say second services or sub services, what we have just seen. So we have seen the Azure repos. Okay, and inside that we have just understood what is the use cases it can be and what is the need of Azure DevOps. Okay, so this is nothing but a Git or GitLab or GitHub, and there's some Azure repo as well. There's a like native repo. Okay, I need to find the name, which is not that popular. Most of the people are using one of them, and this is like having all kind of security and all kind of features they have, which is getting very very stable, and you can rely on that. Okay. So the third, what we are trying to discuss. The third we are trying to discuss is Azure pipeline. Okay. And I'm going into sequential manner, even though it's given into different way. Okay, like in this way, but I'm trying to go into sequential manner so that we can correlate. So Azure board, our work is done. My code into my Azure repos with the enhancement and the merge request and so on. Okay, after merging into the master, and then let's say we have the 70 lines of code, which is the enhanced version into after 2 weeks of a sprint. So we got this one. Now the question is, what is happening? So this 70 lines of code, okay, this is, let's say, this is still in Git, okay, Git repo or some kind of repos, okay, it is still into Git repo. That will not solve the purpose. My purpose is not to just store, right? My purpose will solve because if I have developed the code, correct, then it has to go to a testing round, then it has to go to a next level of production in production release or prod model release, then it will be going live and so on, right? So that's the reason we have to discuss about some more thing, which is if you come back here, we have Azure test plan as well. Okay. And this is not that popular, okay, but many teams and many people are finding this is also very important, okay, and I will discuss about this one as well, okay. And finally, if we have is artifact is anyways, that's fine, so that is part of pipeline itself, but we can discuss about that. Okay, we have this five um, different sub services. Okay, so let's talk about this one. So this one is just into my Git repo. Then what is the next step? So there are two next steps are there. So development is done and code is also merged. Okay, so what is the next two steps we have to do? We have to test our code. So unit testing anyways developer will do, correct? But let's say if this has to be a system tested or this has to be integration tested, and then it has to go our next environment. So let's say we have development environment, okay, dev environment, which was completed as a part of step 2. Now you have a QA or you have a test region, okay, then testing will happen, okay, then the code has to go to a test environment, right? Then how the code will go into test environments, okay. So we have dev, okay, then let's say we have QA, okay, QA, or I can say test environment, okay. Then let's say we have a prod model environment, okay, which is nothing but your pre-prod, or we can say pre-prod rather than prod model, just to avoid confusion, okay. We can say pre-prod environment, and then finally you have prod env, okay, and then it will go live, something like that, right? Go live, okay. So that these two are having a two different reason to have it here, okay. So Azure pipeline, what it is doing, whatever the code you have it into your Git, okay, it's taking from here, from dev environment, then it is going into your test or QA environment. Once it is done, then it is going into your pre-prod environment, then it is going into prod environment, and ultimately when the business and all the kind of testing have completed, then it will go live, right? So as of today, still lots of teams and lots of people are developing the code. They might be merging their code into Git, which is I have a minimum expectation from all the project team. Like I have seen very less team who is still managing their codes and everything, their local and their tools and everything. Still, I have seen that as a part of my architect work, but most of the teams as like minimum requirement for them is to at least move to the Git, whether it's SQL or any kind of code. Minimum requirement and minimum expectation from all the teams to move their code into Git, okay. So once they are moving into Git, right, so still their code base into Git, if they do not have this pipeline, okay. So what do you mean by pipeline, and what is the old method of promoting your code from one environment to other environment? Everybody knows, even though when this pipeline is present in your project or doesn't mean that you are not promoting your code to the next environment. No, we everybody is promoting the code to the next environment, whether it's a manual or whether through the automated pipeline, that is the question. Okay, so as of today, the teams which is still not into that stage where all the cores and all the pipelines has been built and all kind of manual migration from one environment to other environment has been removed. Okay, there's still few teams and like a few projects is still managing their work and promoting their code manually as we are doing before. So what they used to do or what other few teams are doing, so you have a dev code. Okay, so let's take a minimum expectation. You have a code at least in Git. Okay, so still few people or few projects they are taking this code, promoting into QA. Okay, manually. Okay, and then they are going either compiling it and then they are doing the validation and so on, right? So first they have the code dev. Okay, then they have merged into Git or they have placed their code into Git. From dev to Git, or like both might be synced as well, depending on how you are doing it. Then in the QA, the next environment, you are doing the manual manual promotion, manually promoting it. Okay, okay. Then similar way, once you are promoted here, then again manually you are promoting your code into pre-prod. Okay, okay. Then again what you are doing, again you are manually promoting the code into prod also. Okay, so can you see the effort, how much effort you are spending? So let's say I would say, or that is a real like real scenario. One day you are taking this guys, okay, to check all their code, everything is looking good or not. Then you are manually creating those, taking that script, and then you are importing in XML format or Java format or what just whatever the format is, or .NET format, whatever the code you have .py or whatever the code format it accept. Then you have that is in your local, then you promote it into QA, importing that, then again some import error comes, and then some other error comes, and so on. So let's say you are spending a day here. Okay, um, or half day, or let's say altogether a team. Okay, so let's say you are spending a day in a 2 days, like 2 weeks sprint. One day you are spending a time just to promote your code from dev to test. Okay, now you will do validation and so on. So I'm taking this time again, including one day. Now again in pre-prod, which is more serious because now it's becoming almost like kind of prod. Okay, so let's say here also, even though if I become very fair or moderate, I'm taking one day, it might be more also. So might be 1 to 2 days. We will again spend a similar kind of time to have the code changes, maybe like dev will have like dev version of connectivity or database access and dev servers and so on. QA will have the QA related database connectivity, database and the other servers information. Then you will change that and keep it ready for QA promotion. Now for prod model, again, if you have a code which is not mindfully designed and if has some hard coded value and the things are not handled in the PAM sets and everything, again you will try to change the codes little bit to match to your queue environment. So let's say you are taking as a whole team, you are again taking 1 to 2 days time from QA to production. And prod might be again a bigger stuff where you might be taking 1 to 2 days, not promoting, maybe like promotion, then validation and post prod run and so on. Again, 1 to 2 days. Still, if I become very fair, okay. So if you see the timeline, how much time we are wasting, okay, and this is the real reason of becoming this pipeline and any kind of. This is not the just Azure pipeline. We have lots of other things. Let's say you might have heard about Jenkins, okay. Jenkins. Then there are lots of other. If then we have AWS also. There they have inherent and native pipeline process. They also have built. Okay. So coming to the point, how much time we are wasting? We are wasting lots of time doing nothing. We are not doing so. Our work was almost done here. Sprint completed, then code was merged, and now just to promote from one environment to other environment, which was still happening, and many team does that. They manually take the code and goes to one environment to other environment. And we know this is a very important activity because ultimately code has to go to the next environment, either for testing by the system testing, or if you have a specific testing team, they will do the testing, or it has to go to A prod model where, let's say, you are doing the UAT testing, user acceptance testing. Here, let's say you are doing the system testing, or maybe some other testing team are doing the testing your code. And anyways, production, it will go and then go live, and it will be post prod validation, right? Post prod validation will happen and it will go live. So this is a regular step. Any team does that, and it is happened everywhere in all the project and all the team. But how much time we are wasting? If you see one day here, then almost 2 days here and another 2 days. So just to promote our code from one environment to next environment, and then another next environment, another next environment, we are spending a 5 days time, and that to be might be a whole team. So if you have 10 member of team, and the 10 members is wasting their 5 days of time combinedly just to promote the code, so you can see almost 5 days, and the 10 developers, then 80 hours into 400 hours you are just spending. So let's say you have a 10 members, okay, and if you each count with the 8 hours, okay, and then you have a 5 days overall. So how much? This might be a 400 hours just to make this happen, which is a very costly effort as an organization, as a project, which is which is not adding any value. Correct? We are not developing anything. Just to develop product, you are promoting into next environment, so which is a complete waste of time and waste of money. Correct? So that's why most of the team and most of the project, they are choosing this pipeline. What these pipelines are? So I would not say these are very easy to build. Okay, these has their own challenges, and this is little more difficult as compared to your regular development, because I tried this one, and this is little tricky, and this has little more expertise required to develop this pipeline. But the why company and the project is moving to build the pipeline, the beauty of the pipeline is, okay, we can build in like whatever the your organization and architect decide to do that, whether it's Azure DevOps or Jenkins or whoever is um, accepted and authorized tool is in your organization, we can do it from anyone. But what I have felt, Azure DevOps is pretty easy to build this pipeline as compared to Jenkins, because I worked in both things, but I feel like Azure DevOps and Azure pipelines are far more easy and compatible as compared to Jenkins. Okay, and it has lots of different offerings. Coming to the point, what this Azure pipelines or any pipeline is. Okay, so what pipeline does? It's a simple, as the word mentioned. Okay, what it will do, it will create, okay, it will create a pipeline which will take your code. Okay, so as of now we are doing all this manually, right? So let's say pipeline has built, and you can say, we can take any name. What we can take a name, let's see, what I have given. I'm just searching the name which I have just used. Okay, so something like this, right? I have taken this one. So we can say something like that. Okay, something like that. What it will do, so the very basic thing it will do, okay, it will first of all remove all this manual activity. The very basic example of that, or very basic work of that, no manual activity for code promotion. That is the very primary thing it will do. Okay, no manual activity at all. Okay, the first manual activity will be, to um, create this code. Okay, and like there either one of our team members will build this pipeline. Okay, and this has their own challenges, this has their own prerequisite to do that. But what will happen, only one or two resources will work on that, and just that too not regularly. Okay, so let's say you have a developer, okay, developer one, who took let's say 2 weeks of time. Okay, 2 weeks of time to build this pipeline. Okay, and this pipeline has been created. Okay, this pipeline has been created. Okay, and what it is doing, it is taking your code from Git. Then this will go to, as soon as you run this pipeline, okay, run this pipeline, then what it will do, it will take the code from Git, it will move it into QA, it will move it into pre-prod. Okay, then it will move it into prod. Okay, so one developer took 2 weeks of time. This pipeline has been created, and then whenever you have to promote any kind of code, and I'm giving a very generic, which may not be the generic all the time because it requires lots of prerequisite. I'm not going to that. That will be some completely a vast different topic of DevOps training. Okay, just to give you very fundamental idea what this pipeline looks like. Okay, so let's say one developer took 2 weeks of time, he developed this pipeline. Now this pipeline can be run by any developer to promote their code from lower environment to upper environment. Okay, so now you have developed, then you have a code into Git which you are taking, which is nothing but, let's say you have 70 lines of code. Let's take this example just to be like correlate each other. Okay, so you get this code, 70 lines of code. Now there's no manual activity. Like any other tool, you go to this Azure DevOps, you search the pipeline name, and then you have to just point which Git repo and which particular code you wanted to migrate. Those options will be given it to you, and then you promote the code from your Git to QA, and then QA to pre-prod and the prod. Okay, so there's hardly any manual activity here. The pipelines I created, it will pick it up and it will promote it. Inside that, lots of other things happen. You have to create a build, then there will be a approval process and so on, right? So there are lots of automation we can do, lots of checks and balances we can do, but I'm not going into that detail because that will debate our whole topic, and we have not uh, lots of time to discuss all those in this session. But the point is, whatever you wanted to do, okay, so let's say you build the pipeline or you wanted to run the pipeline. Okay, then every kind of check and balances you can have. Okay, so if you want to have, okay, tech lead approval, okay, before migration. Okay, so we can do that because I designed this one for one of the project where that is a normal risk and the normal ask. Somebody says you change the code, you run the pipeline, and there's no monitoring happening. By mistake, if I promote the bad code into till production, then who will be responsible? And that is a very common risk, and that is a very common challenge. Okay, so that's why we can automate this pipeline as much as possible, and we can monitor and restrict as much as we can. It up to the project management and project lead decide, project lead or the project manager decide what kind of check and balances we can have. So pipeline is created, you have a code in Git. Before going into QA, if you want to check a checkpoint, if you want to add a checkpoint that every time before promoting the code it has to be approved by your manager. So what will happen, whatever the Git repository and Git repo acts like link, it will go to your manager as a mail or as a notification. He will open that, he will see, and he will verify, okay, what was the previous code. So he has to be tech lead, okay, or he has to be the some technical guy. It cannot be a manager approval because that will not help anything. So let's say he knows previously it was 50 line, no old line has deleted, but new 20 line has been added. And since he has seen the demo, so he knows that these are the correct code, then only he will approve that. And then 70 lines of code, which is old 50 lines and new 20 lines of code, are good to go to QA. Similar check and balances checkpoints you can add for pre-prod and for prod. If you wanted to have your maybe architect also to approve the code, which is not likely required. Okay, but let's say your architect says no, I wanted to see the code also a little bit, that you can have your architect and your project lead also to see your code and approve. The point is, we can automate that, and in very short span of time your code can go from Git to QA to pre-prod, and pre-prod to prod. So let's say in any scenario, okay, I haven't seen like it's running very long. Okay, so this might run maybe a very large piece of code, maybe maximum 30 minutes. Okay, one pipeline might run 30 minutes, it goes to QA, okay, with the check and check like some approval and 30 minutes. So let's say here also 30 minutes, and then again let's say here also 30 minutes. Okay, and production also maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour, let's say 1 hour. Okay, so the point is, this pipeline has been built and given it to developer. So the only first time of build, okay, the first time whenever it was trying to get built, it was a hard time for a developer or DevOps developer to create that. It's not that hard, but it's little tricky as compared to normal development because lots of prerequisites required. But now this is developed and given it to a normal developer. He can use that. What he should know minimum thing, that how to run the pipeline, what code base he has to use, what kind of approval he is needed. He has to just trained to use this pipeline. He is no more required to take his code, migrate into this manual way, and unnecessary waste his productive time into unproductive work. That is the main reason every team and most of the teams, they are trying to get rid of this manual activity because it has lots of chances of faults and lots of chances of getting corruptions and lots of error can be or error prone process because it's a manual process. So that's why. And the other thing, it's wasting lots of time. So if you see the 400 hours is just waiting waste into maybe a whole 2 or 3 sprint or 4 sprint, because every sprint the code will not go into production for sure. But let's say in 2 months and 3 months or maybe in a one pi, if the whole team is just wasting 400 hours or 500 hours just to promote their code into a production environment, that is a huge loss. In this 400 hours you can utilize the time to something else. Now this work, you don't need lots of time, and this can be included as a part of your development story, where you have to just run the pipeline and promote your code from one environment to other environment, which saves your time, which increase the productivity, and lots of error which might happen during the manual run, it can be avoided. Okay, so this is the advantage of having the pipeline, and how we can create and everything we will try to see once we go for demo. Okay, so with that, okay, we have this Azure board which we understood, then understanding of Azure repos, and then we have understood the pipeline. We're trying to create this pipeline and we'll see whether we can do some promotion or not. Okay, but this is the main idea of this pipeline. It can be any pipeline. Okay, there's no restriction depending on which tools and which environment you want, you can use that. So any questions so far from anyone? We can take 1 or 2 questions if anybody has anything. Anyone has any question? Okay. Um, let's go back.
So
Okay.
is there a
Uh-huh.
maintenance effort required? Say, suppose we don't want to implement something, and later how much is the effort for the team lead or the tech lead to maintain the pipeline if something changes?
Yeah. So the pipeline work is depends. Okay. So let's say the pipeline is not kind of a development, right? So pipeline is just built, okay, to take your code from repository, move it to QA, and move it to pre-prod and prod. If your infrastructure where Git repo is same, okay, and then you have a kind of file and kind of code which you're promoting is same, okay, and the environment is same, then it's a very less time to maintain this pipeline. So once it is working and there's a definitive path, okay, this is my Git repo, this is my QA environment, this is my pre-prod environment, this is the prod environment, then it's a very less maintenance required by your team or the tech lead. Okay, so let's say now you are creating a new project, okay, and then it's about the project to project, you're creating a new project, then you have a different kind of let's say you are till today you are promoting the Java code, tomorrow let's say you got some kind of DDL code or maybe a database code you have to promote, then you might have different kind of file, and if you wanted to create a separate pipeline to promote the Java code and a separate pipeline to promote your DDL, then you have to create a separate pipeline. But the point is maintenance will be very less, but if you have different kind of promotions coming, then you might have to replicate the same pipeline into different way, and you have to start using a different code like SQL code or BTEC script and something to use the pipeline to promote your BTEC script. Is that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And another question is that suppose the environment is not fixed,
Uh-huh.
so where it is going is not one environment. The environments can change. So. In case it
So,
is getting deployed to say laptops, then
okay.
we can have 10 QA servers, 10 QA. Then is it easy to create a pipeline like that, or it is fixed to only one set of servers?
No, so it has to be defined. Okay, it cannot be vague. Okay, so what you're asking, that is a very good question. Okay, so let's say if you are telling unless until you know where you are promoting the code, you cannot define the pipeline. You can define a temporary pipeline where you can go ahead and try to change the target server or target destination, but that is not advisable because you will losing the whole concept of pipelining it, right? So that is again becoming a manual where you are not defining what is your target server or target audience, right? So first of all, these things have, that's what I was mentioning, the prerequisite is very important. Okay, so first of all, my pipeline has to access to Git, then pipeline has to have the connectivity between whether it's a QA or pre-prod or prod. Unless until the Azure repos makes a connection between your target server, it cannot promote. So it's not like that you have a code and try to import directly from your local to your QA. That is not the way. First of all, Azure DevOps or Azure pipeline has to have the access to talk to your QA servers or QA repository wherever your code is going to be. Okay, or whether it's a Java platform or Java server or cloud server or any on-prem server, he should know the target. Without that, whatever you're trying to do, and if you're trying to like change abruptly, I don't think so that is the good practice to do it.
Okay.
So any other question from anyone? Okay, so we will continue. So these three are, let's say, we discussed about that. Okay, and I'm coming to the fourth point. Why I'm coming again and again to this one, so that we can correlate. Okay, so Azure board, we know we developed the code. We took 2 weeks of time. Then all the codes gone into my Azure DevOps. Okay, where we have stored our codes into Git or any kind of repository. Okay, the third one we have seen, we are trying to automate the promotion. What is the pipeline? Pipeline is kind of, we are trying to automate the promotion, and they call it as CI/CD pipeline. If you might have heard about this pipeline. Okay, so what is this CI/CD? So it is continuous integration and continuous deployment. Okay, so wherever you see that CI/CD or pipeline, you might see this word CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. So if you now try to correlate these two words, okay, CI/CD with the pipeline, what we have talked about it. So continuous integration. What do you mean by integration? You have a 50 line of code before, 20 line of code you added, and you ultimately integrated with the existing code. That is the meaning of integration. You already have a project where you are trying to add some more functionality or trying to add some more features into the existing code. Then you are not going to build everything scratch. Whatever the existing code, you are trying to integrate some enhancement to that. So that's what it is called as continuous integration. What do you mean by deployment? Deployment, we know we are trying to deploy our code into QA or prod, pre-prod or prod. So what we are trying to do, first we are trying to integrate our code into existing code or existing script. Then we have to deploy that. So that's why this pipelines, wherever you see the CI/CD pipeline, and try to search this guy. Okay, I'll just try to search with you guys again. Let's say if you try to search here and just try to do Google, and then you say CI/CD pipeline. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so they will talk about what is this one, and they talk like there are different vendors. But if you talk about like what exactly it's, you can see this. Lots of people will talk about different things, but ultimately it's a continuous integration and continuous deployment. What do you mean by that? The it's meaning exactly the same what I'm trying to explain here. And now I did not use this word as of today, like as of now, because I wanted to cover this, and then you can understand, and then it makes sense what is the integration and what is the deployment. Okay, so this you might hear like very frequently once you go for creating any pipeline. Okay, now this test plan. Okay, the fourth point is test plan, the fifth point is artifact. Artifact, anyways, we know this will be your any package or any kind of code package or any kind of your package and so on. So this is not that like very something new. This is kind of once you build your package and so on, that artifact will be in your repository or pipeline starting point. That is fine, but this is important. Okay, so if I ask one question, how many of you have heard about this Q test? Any one of you have heard about this Q test? This is another tool, Q test tool. Have you heard about this one? Anyone from our group?
What's the name of the tool?
Q test.
Q test. No.
Or if anybody can like explain maybe in 2-3 minutes what do you understand by or in what is the idea of this test plan, why it has been introduced here. Any just vague idea, doesn't have to be accurate.
Q test might be. I'm just thinking that might be when. So you are talking about queuing, right?
It's not about queuing, it's about the testing.
It could be like when you're in pipeline, you put a add-on that, hey, um, do the automated testing also before deploying. Might be that's the thing you're talking about.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. So
Okay.
Qtest is a very nice tool, and many teams and many organization is started using that. Okay, this is not the only tool. We have similar way as a Azure test plan. Okay, and most of the people is still trying to integrate, but still they are not. At least what I can see, they are moving to boards, whether it's a Jira board or Azure board. Then repos are becoming very mandatory thing for the team. The third thing, they are coming into pipelines, which they are trying to build automated pipelines. So these three things I can easily see that teams are getting transformed wherever I go for my part of my architect role and so on. I can see that teams are getting transformed. Okay, this thing I can clearly see. Most of the people have come out of the waterfall from like most of the teams, that is for sure. Repos also, they started using it, because still I can see a few teams they do the old way of doing it, which is like really not good. But still few teams I can see their old way of having the codes into their local tools and systems and so on. And this pipeline is still not all the teams, maybe 50% or 40% of teams and the projects, they are still started using it, or 20-30% are already started using it. Few teams and few projects are trying to go to that point, but still this pipeline is also, I would not say I have seen like more than 40% teams or 40% project has implemented. Okay, this testing. Okay, so this testing is nothing new. This testing is as we have seen, right, we have the QA environment or test environment. It is already happening, and this is already taken care by other people, or other either unit testing or system testing or integration testing, right? It's already happening, but it's very difficult. Like you might have automation testing, that is a different story, right? But automation testing is kind of like whatever the testing you are doing it, you are trying to automate that, the testing will be happening automated, but it's not part of your overall deliverables plan. So what this Azure test plans is, as soon as you have your story done, or you say okay, my codes are here and it will go to the next plan, then as soon as this Azure test plan will kick off, either it will automatically can be linked to run your automated testing. That is one aspect. Other aspect is, for each story or each delivery, you should have a testing attached to that. Okay, and then how this testing and test plan can be decided, how you have a sprint planning done, where you see analysis is done, then development is done, then little unit testing happens, then you have a whole sprint planning decided. Similar way, the test plan also has to happen right along with your development phase. So this is nothing but, this is a new to the market, that is not that new. It was already happening in a manual way, but it was not aligned, or not aligned to the overall life cycle of development, right? So that's why Q test is already there. Lots of team, what they do the development. Before demo, all the stories and all the evidences and everything, they go to Q test or any kind of testing tool, attach their evidences, and everything is so Development is one part, and testing has to be part of Q test, and then it has to be aligned to your story as a testing evidences. Okay, whether it's a system testing or unit testing, what could be. Similar way, Azure is also coming with the idea. They are telling, if you are doing a development, I know you did the development, 50 lines of code is converted into 70 lines of code, but what is the evidences, right? My tech lead can see my code, but let's say after 1 month or 2 months, when we have a bigger audience and something got stuck or something has broken into production or some bigger bugs come, then it will come to your tech lead and your team whether it was tested properly or not. If it is tested and if it is not documented in a central place, then it is a chance that it might miss. Then what the team is telling, let's forget about this isolation, the testing in isolation in the silos. Let's integrate your development story or any kind of story with the test plan. In that, what will happen? Your story, okay, then what will happen, your story will be aligned to test plan. Okay, when you are, okay, a story will be assigned to a test plan. What will happen, let's say when you say story 1, okay, story 1 completed, it cannot be completed unless until your test let's say test suite or test cases or whatever you can say, test suites are executed. Okay, executed and evidences are attached. Okay, so when we say this, first of all, test plan has to be there. Okay, what kind of testing, and testing cannot be same for all story or all kind of work. It has to be different way. For each story you have to write a different test cases depending on the story functionality and acceptance criteria. But the what is the common point, the story has to be have the some test cases, some test suite and so on, and it has to be executed. And whatever the unit testing you did or some other dedicated tester has done that, they have to attach the evidences that they did the unit testing, either developer or tester has did the testing. They found whatever the source was there, what was the target was there, either count is matching or either values are matching or whatever the functionality was expected to have it as a part of a story, that has been taken care. Okay, the point is, this is also becoming a very important and crucial point, crucial evidences as a part of your story completion. So once this is attached, right, and I have seen many teams are doing very nice work where before going to demo for any story, first of all they have to complete their development, then little bit of team review, then they have to go to, before going into then they have added another phase where they say testing. Okay, so if I come little bit up here, okay, anyways we have to see this one. So what is happened, development will happen, then you will have a team review. Okay, and then you will have a testing comes. Okay, and talking about the story cycle. Okay, the story life cycle. Okay, when, what do you mean by story life cycle, means how the story start, like how the story work and the task work start and where it goes to demo and done, right? So it will go to testing, then it will go to demo, then it will go to done, something like that, right? You might have already, you guys might already seeing that one or two steps might be here and there, but this is the normal practice or normal standard where any stories is given, it will go to, or it might be in to-do list. Okay, it might be in to-do list or might be in backlog, or it comes to sprint. Okay, something like that. But this is the standard flow. Your story will be in to-do list, then it comes to in particular sprint, then you do the development. Then once development is there, then team review will happen. You have to schedule some meeting with the team or your tech lead, whoever it is. Then it goes to testing phase. Then this part is aligned with your test cycle or the test plans. What will happen here? Till here you are free to do whatever you are doing it, doing the redevelopment, readjusting and everything. Once you go into testing, either it's a unit testing or it's going to a dedicated testing team. If it is unit testing, then you have to write the test cases. Then you have to come to Q test or Azure test plan. You have to attach your story or your task or the any kind of story number, anything to the test plan. You have to test the test suite. Then you have to write the test cases, and then you have to execute that and attach the evidences whatever you have developed, whether your source query and target query count and the values are matching or not matching and so on, whatever the acceptance criteria, depending that you have to attach the evidences as a part of unit testing, which is a cycle of your story. Okay, then it will be demoed to whole team or the product owner, whoever it is. And once the demo happens and your tech lead or your product owner accept that, then it's done. But in between, this has to come. Okay, so this is the part which I was talking about. So here it's happening, and Qtest is a famous tool, and it is nicely integrated with the Zira and many other, even like Azure Test Plan also, they are trying to integrate this. So this is the way it has to be integrated. So with overall idea, what we are trying to understand is we are trying to automate and bring everything on a single platform, so that all kind of manual activity and things which were happening in isolation can be avoided, and overall things can be happen in automated way, so that we do not miss a single step, and we do not try to like avoid and try to be ignorant and skip the process, okay, or the protocols. Okay, what is the like benefit of this one? So benefit of this one, let's say after 3 months from now, okay, let's say the code has been gone to testing and the prod and production and everything. After 3 months, okay, what happens? You have handed over the project, because you are just a development project. You are handed over this project to a maintenance team. Okay, okay, and maintenance team was little rough and they were trying to find the bugs and everything, or your code started failing into production and so on. Then lots of escalation happened, and the team who was handling the maintenance and everything, they escalated to your management that this feature was not properly built and lots of bugs, and every day we are facing the failure. Then your manager comes and then look at it, and then tech lead look at it, and then see on which particular story or which particular features this particular functionality has been built. Then the obvious question will be asked to everyone. Tech lead will it the question will be asked to tech lead whether you have reviewed or not before promoting into production. Product owner will be asked whether you have seen the functionality or not. Once they will say yes, then it will go to developer. Developer will say I did everything correctly, and then my product owner only has approved that and tech lead has reviewed that. Then why this is missed? That is the obvious question. Then what will happen? Since you are maintaining all this Q test or whatever it is, okay, or any kind of tool, or maybe Azure test plan, okay, since you are maintaining that, what will happen? Even though after 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, if you are able to track what features it was built, what iteration it was there, what kind of work it was, and who did that, because now a story has been assigned to a person, Q test is assigned that like executed by that person, then you have a right access to the evidences which a developer has attached, which your tech lead has been reviewed, and which has been accepted by product owner. So it cannot be unaccounted, you know. So as of now, you have lots of gaps and lots of room for unaccounted like work. Now with this one, all the work can be accounted, and after 6 months or a year or 2 years also, if you want to maintain those long evidences, you can do that. And you can rightly track from your like after 6 months also, and like go back to 6 months back, and you can track who developed and what kind of evidences it has. So that's why this is like still it's not that popular. Anyways, the testing is happening and also on, but this is the one of the beauty of this test Azure test plan or Q test or similar kind of tool, where now everything is directly attached to your work, and it cannot go unaccounted, or if it is accepted by product owner, or if it accepted by team led, then it cannot be, developer cannot be blamed. Correct, developer did whatever it has to do. Then it's a tech lead issue, or the product manager has been approved that, and then it has been handed over to the separate team. Then whatever the requirement was given, it was developed. So it's either a requirement missing or a developer issue, whoever it is issue, we can easily find the root cause of it rather than guessing it. So this is one of the beauty of this one. And I have seen people has gone back 6 months or 1 year, they track it, what happens, and the senior management and lots of people comes into the board, they talk about it, and then whoever the responsible, who is the responsible is the responsible guy. We cannot do anything, but we can rightly find the miss where it was missed. It's a requirement gap or it's a developer miss. Is that make sense why we have this Azure test plan, or does it make sense now when we are trying to integrate all these 3-4 things? Or any question from anyone?
So Q-test is specifically for testing the build process, or it's just like defect management?
It's kind of a defect management and the build process both. So Q test is like a few people are trying to integrate with the build as well, but it can be used as a defect management and normal testing or system testing, or maybe automated, like few people are trying to automate as well. So this has the wide offering. So Q test is not just for the build test. It can be for anything, even for defect management as well. So you can create your defect bugs and everything also, if you're not even build like associating with your like normal pipelines and so on.
We are going to see that in tomorrow's demo, or like how to create that pipeline and all, or what?
Yeah,
When?
we will see that. Yeah, so this one Qtest is not part of this suite. This is another good tool, so that's what I mentioned, but we will see all these things. So we will see the board, how it works, then Azure repos, how it works. And today also we have like still some time. We can start with the board. We will just see how we can create the stories and how we'll create the project and everything. But in tomorrow we will see the Azure repos, then we will see the pipeline, and then this might be we can create something or not. We will see if we have time. An artifact is just artifact. Okay, but these three definitely we will see the demo. Okay,
Okay, thanks.
so any other question from anyone? Okay, so I think we are good. So this artifact, we just can go and take a little read from here. It's not something which is very unique. Okay, so if you see and try to read a little bit about that, or you can read it here as well. It's kind of a place where you can have your package or something like that, which can be used for your pipeline. Okay, and it can be attached with your pipeline as an artifact, which is nothing but you have a 5 or 10 different script, and then you have created an as artifact or built, and that can be attached to your pipeline for promotion. Okay, so this is kind of inside this. So these three are integrated: Azure pipelines, Azure repos, and this built and artifact kind of attached to each other to make a CI/CD pipeline. Okay, let's go back and try to jump directly onto this one. Okay, so one more thing, once you are coming here, so do two options you can get, start free or start free with a GitHub. One of them you can choose, and as soon as you go from here, it will ask you like if you have a git pipeline, like already GitHub access or not. If you're not, you have to create a git account for yourself. Okay, and it will be free unless until you use exhaustively. Okay, otherwise what you can do, if you come back here and try to create the start free, then it will ask you to what is this, I don't know. Okay, whatever it is, uh, you have to enter your whatever the Microsoft account you have, and then you have to use that and then say next and everything, and then it will create a project. Okay, so for me I have already created, and I used to create and delete sometime. Okay, so let's say with that little settings, what you have to do, it will ask you for the project. So I have given the screenshot of all this. Okay, so let's say if you come here, and this we have already discussed in very details, almost 1.5 hours we covered with that. Okay, now we have discussed all about this, almost everything. Okay, now coming to this point. Okay, so you have to say this one, then you have to come here, it will look like this, then you have to say start free or start free with the GitHub. Okay, whichever you feel better, you can do it. And then something like that, you have to select a project, create the project, and it will start something like that. Okay, so once you go that, and if it is a first time user, you have to do little like account creation and so on, but it will ask you to create a project. Okay, and I just like couldn't take a screenshot before like creating the project, but if once you go from here, it's pretty straightforward to create it. Okay, so let's say if I'm into Azure DevOps. Okay, you can see here, so this is my I have created ID, and then you have a C. I have created a project. You can create another project. Okay, then I have created this DevOps ABI, and inside that you can see this 5. This is board, this is repo and pipeline and so on. So whatever we are discussing as of now, all you can see here. So let's say one more time I'll go back. We have this Azure DevOps. Inside that I have created this my credentials, and then I have created this project. Okay, And then once I click on this, I can see this one. Okay, so this is exactly what we have seen so far when I was explaining into draft notebook, and this is exactly it works. Okay, the way I have explained it. So you have a board here. Okay, you can create the story, you can create a epic, and everything. We will try to do it right away in front of you as well. Then you have a backlog, a sprint, and query and delivery plans and everything. You have a repos. I have created a small repos where I have added some script and so on. Okay, then I have created some pipeline which is failed because I do not have the target where I want to deploy and so on, but we can create a pipeline tomorrow as well and try to showcase you. Okay, and test plan, if you want to attach, we can attach our test plan with the stories and everything. Artifacts is artifacts. Okay, so let's just start with the board. Okay, what we have just seen, and then we will see what are the options we have. So this is your Azure board. We call it as a Azure board AD, and Jira is another one. Okay, so let's just start from here. Okay, so if I try to do the demo after this one, we will wind up and then we will continue from tomorrow. Okay, so we call it as Azure board. Okay, in short, they call it as a AD. Okay, with that, this is also a kind of Jira or any kind of Kanban and agile board. Okay, so first of all, you will see what all options we have. Okay, so it will say new work item. So what kind of item you want to do it. So I hope you guys understand what is the epic and what is the issue and task. I'm not going into detail because that is another massive topic to discuss, the agile and everything. Just to give an idea. Okay, so what is the epic? Okay, pick, and then you will have, maybe you can say features depending on that. Then you can have a story, and then you can have some, like in Jira they say like a story and task, two different things, but here they doesn't matter. Okay, and here they say issues. So okay, something like that. So what you can have, so let's say you can create epic, you can have issues, you can have a task. Okay, and then depending on that, it will be a board where you can see what things assigned to you. So this will be a this is just me. You can invite your team members, and if you are a owner of this one or you're admin to this one, you can add as many people you want to add as a part of project, and then all the peoples and all the other work you can see here. Okay, backlog is you are doing a backlog refinement, so that in before the next sprint you should have some work which you don't want to bring it into your current sprint. Then you can keep on creating the issues and task and story, you can pile up here, and whatever the stories you want to bring into to current sprint or next sprint, you can bring from backlog. Okay, this will be a sprint, you are into which sprint you can see, and then we can create some more sprint and so on. Then we can define the sprint timeline here. So lots of things, or almost everything which we do any agile board or Jira, you can almost do everything. This is a some kind of query. If you want to find, okay, on Abhishek name how many stories have completed, or if you want to see how many stories have been completed, or how many in progress are there, how many are done, or how many to do. So lots of query you can write it depending on that. Okay, so let's say work type and what all things and state and so on. So this is kind of not always for you, might be a scrum master or a tech lead, he want to do a quick view, and you might be feeling why it's needed. For now you can see just one story. Let's say you have a 10-member team and you have 50 stories from the this story, this sprint, that sprint, and so on. And if you don't want to waste your time, you can simply write the queries and you can have this query run, and then you can get a very nice and crispy result come to you depending on what query you want to write. And you can save the query for each sprint if you want to promote the status and everything, your project manager, your team manager, and so on, to publish that as a part of a scrum master. Okay, and this is your delivery plan, so that is also fine. We can create some delivery plan when what will happen. Okay, let's go back to the board. Okay, and then we will try to create some item. Okay, so I have created some epic, so let's create a new epic here. Okay, so we can write, okay, what is the epic, and due date is July 30th. We can say epic 2. Okay, and we can give some name here, and then we can say this is a demo epic for batch July, whatever you want to. So this is nothing big task. So this is whatever you want to write it, you can write it, and then unassigned. So let's say I'm the only member here, so I'm assigning to myself what is the area so to do and so on. Okay, and this is part of added to backlog or what iteration you want to do it and so on. You can add it here. Okay. So this epic has been created. Okay, so now let's go back to board. Okay, and now you can see the another epic has been created and everything, right? So now similar way, if you wanted to create some story or issues, okay, so if you wanted to create a story, what you can do, let's say story 2, and again assign to myself, and then you can link to epic and everything. Okay, or this is another story for Abhishek, something like that. Okay, and then this will be again to do now because we are not assigning that. Okay, so this kind of thing you can see here. So this is your board, right? So work item you can see here. Now in the board you might not see everything. The reason is I have not added into my sprint. There will be few things into backlog, few things, whatever you want. So this board is whatever you are currently working as a part of that, right? This work item will try to show you everything depending on what kind of a status we wanted to check and so on. Whether you want to keep something in backlog, then you have to go and try to, because I'm keeping both into, like, I haven't aligned everything by sprint wise and backlog wise. That's what you can see in all the places. But we can discretely assign into few into backlog, few into your stories, and any other agile tool work. Similar way this Azure board also works. So here, if you want to bring those stories into sprint, let's say we are into this sprint, only 2 days remaining. If you want to go to next sprint, and if you want to pass this story, it is not completed in this sprint to next sprint, that also you can do. Okay, so along with that, depending on how it will move from your, like, let's say you have done here, and if you want to doing, and then you might have to add some more information, because if you remember we have added the testings and then team review and then demo and done that also, we can add it here. For now I have just added two, and then if you want to move it to done, so depending on somebody wanted to accept that and before that, so we can keep on adding some more information here as well. Okay, and similar way in the backlog, if you have lots of stories, since it is before, now we are just seeing like we were having one two story, but now one story has been gone to done, so that's what you don't see it there. Okay, you can bring it here back. Let's see, you might see the two. Okay, so depending on which status it is. Okay, and then we can add lots of things. So this is the default setup which you see here, but it gives you lots of option to add lots of other activities and other, depending on what your teams wants to do it. Okay, and again these things depending on which sprint you want to do it and so on, you can do it. Okay, so let's see, if you collapse everything, you can see in this way, and then doing and so on, and whatever you want to check, you can do it. Okay, and let's say if you are working on one story, and if you just open this one, and if you wanted to write the, let's say, some comment or discussion. Okay, so let's say what you did. Okay, so July 30th, this is the normal work we used to do it, like comment your work. Okay, I have completed the what do you say, one functionality, something like that you can add, and then you can simply save, or simply save and close. So if I just save, it will go on. So depending on that, what story you're working, you want to comment, so that if tech lead or your product owner or your scrum master wanted to see on daily basis, anyways you will have a stand up where you have to go and explain. But if you wanted to add your notes as well, so that it is documented how you progress within a 2 weeks of time, then you can add those. And many scrum masters suggest to keep on adding your comments and your activities what you are doing that. Okay, so that is one part. Okay, and depending on that, lots of other things. So let's say if you want to point out, let's say how much capacity I have. So if you want to define the capacity for each team members, and how much days I have left, and how much capacity, let's say if it's an 8 or 10 pointer of a story capacity I have. So as soon as this cap I have a 5 point story already assigned, then I have a 3 point story left for my capacity to be consumed into next sprint. So lots of other things we can assign, and then we can say how much capacity left and how much capacity is still there to have more story assigned to me or anybody else. Okay, so something like that we can keep on, and here we can create some burden chart as well. How much, how many team members, how much in the mid of the sprint or starting of the sprint, and end of the sprint, how much capacity was there, how much a story point was there, and how much it was burnt. Okay, so it has like full fledged, it's not into initial version of what you say of a board. It's a full-fledged board. Lots of teams and lots of as teams have started. I have seen like Caterpillar and some other teams have already full-fledged started using that as Azure board. Lots of other teams also who likes the Microsoft and Azure product, they have already started using the Azure board rather than going into Jira board. So you can say this is equivalent to Jira. I don't see it's a less or more, but it's also a very competitive agile board which can be utilized for your day-to-day iteration and sprint planning tracking. So any question from anyone before we try to wind up for today's session, and then tomorrow we will meet for repos and the pipelines.
Yeah, I have one question, Abhishek.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, is it free? I mean, is it going to be, suppose I want to use it, and then do I have to pay something for using the Azure board, or I can just use it freely?
Yeah, so on your personal level, it's free for sure. I think it gives the five user, up to five user, you can use it. I think, yeah, that's
Mm.
what the option. Beyond five user, I think you might have to like sign up for maybe, but it's not costly. I think maybe $5 or $10 per month for the 50 and so on. But up to personal level, it's free, and up to five user also you can have the free. So if you go to overview and you can add or invite, I can send you few guys. I tried to send to few of my friends, and you can see, so I think it says maybe four or five guys, up to
That's what
that you,
we
yeah.
don't have a big team. That's why, so that's the reason we are deciding, because they will not accept it if it is too much, what we say, because, yeah, it's a confidentiality issue involved, right? Suppose
Mhm.
we want to kind of use in the project, but not to get big approvals from high level. So that's
No,
the
I don't
reason.
think so. And if you wanted to use, and I don't think so, it's very costly. I think it's very cost effective, and because Jira might be more expensive as compared to this one, because this will be lots of team and lots of project which was having a less budget. I have seen using them, and nobody has
Yeah,
complained that it charges a lot. So it's a good
actually,
to use.
in my last project, we didn't use the Azure board, but we used Zero board. But it seemed to have all the features like you mentioned from Agile in this board also, right?
Mhm.
So we can create the chart, what we say, burn down chart, and we can assign the task, and we can close the task, and that way it looks like you mentioned it's full fledged. Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
completely full-fledged, and I cannot completely commit like a comment on the charges. Okay, depending on team size and everything, they give the discount and everything. But I can assure you this is a cost-effective thing. So I don't think so it's very costly where you have to write like spend $1,000. It might be within a good like very cost-effective for your, like if you have a small team that you
and
can do.
one
Yeah.
finally one so this will be all on the website, right? So we'll be worried about taking the backup or things like that. So it needs a lot of complex process to just have the backup of the stories, for example, or it will be maintained by the portal itself.
It will be maintained by portal itself. There's no such backup things required. Even in Jira, I think maybe after 1 2 years, if you want to discard and like because of lots of things piled up, but I think for a couple of years, it's completely good. I haven't seen like any project is going and manually taking the backup unless until it's too old. So I don't think so you have to do anything manual. Okay, so if you see
Okay.
here, I think we have lots of option and 30 days, but this is just for the individual access. But if you're trying to get for 10 or 15 people, those things, all the option will be given. And I don't think so it requires to take any kind of manual backup, because that will spoil all the kind of your web versions, correct? So it doesn't require to take any kind of
Yeah,
backup.
it is critical. Yeah, because if we lose our storage, because that's worse than maintaining it in Excel, for example.
No, I would assure you, like storage is getting very cheap and cheap, and all these things directly you don't see it here. Ultimately, it is going onto your Azure blob kind of storage in the backend, where the cloud storage is something like that. So you don't see in the front end. So Azure, this is your DevOps part. Azure has their own cloud. So ultimately, it will be stored in very cheaply on your to Azure cloud. So you don't have to worry about the storage is becoming very cheap day by day. So I don't think so they are charging lots of on the storage. Depends on number of user. If you're adding it, that will be like little expensive, but the storage is not expensive at all. Those days are gone where we have to spend lots of money on the storage.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So any other question from anyone? Okay, so I think we have a very nice session today, and it was interactive as well. And tomorrow we can try to do little from board, starting from there with little refresh, and then we can try to cover this repos and pipeline as well. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and see you tomorrow at the next, same time, 9 o'clock, and then we will try to cover rest of the session. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.